The Trudeau Liberal government better prepare itself for a summer of discontent. Workers are incredibly frustrated and outraged, and they'll be taking to the streets and their workplaces in concerted, coordinated actions across the country. This isn't just about an extra day in the office for workers. This misguided decision sets up workers to fail by pushing them into physical offices they don't have enough workspace or the proper equipment to do their jobs effectively, and spend their days on virtual calls with their co-workers the same as they would if they were working from home.
That was then President of the Public Service Alliance of Canada, Chris Aylward, promising the government would hear from his members all summer long. Well, they have done just that. And before we bring in the union, let's remind everyone how we got here. Now, when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, the Federal Public Service adopted a remote by necessity operating model. The majority of civil servants worked from home on a full-time basis, according to the Treasury Board. Then in December of 2022, the government announced a mandate to have workers return to the office at least 2 to 3 days per week. Then last spring, the government moved to make it a minimum of 3 days per week, which is due to take effect on Monday. Here now to talk more about the pushback to that return to office plan is Alex Silas, the National Executive Vice President of the Public Service Alliance of Canada. Thanks for being here. I appreciate that.
Mike, thanks for having me.
So you heard the deputy head of the Privy Council and her arguments for it. What do you think about her arguments for 1 more day per week in the office?
Look, I think teamwork, workplace culture, collaboration, these are all great concepts, but it's simply not been the reality in practice for what this return to office has looked like. It's not just a matter of people sitting next to each other and doing different types of jobs. It's people being in completely different departments, completely different parts of the federal public service. The reality is the federal public service is just too complex to try to apply this one-size-fits-all solution of 3 days. What we've been calling for is flexibility, is a policy that works best for each department and each team within that department. And we've shown throughout the lockdown, throughout the pandemic, that remote work can be just as productive, sometimes more productive than going to the office. There's a lot of advantages, not just for the workers in the federal public service, but for the public as well.
But you heard her. She says they're willing to be flexible. Do you not believe her?
Well, I mean, I don't think imposing a unilateral, one-size-fits-all, 3 days a week policy is being flexible. We're looking to continue the process of establishing joint panels for each department, each agency, so we can come up with the best solutions for each of those teams.
Now, I think you probably understand that you may have a bit of a perception problem. A lot of Canadians might be watching this and saying, 3 days per week in the office, that's not half bad. How do you respond to them?
Well, look, I mean, I think keeping in mind that a lot of workers in the federal public service are frontline workers. We represent blue-collar workers, tradespeople, emergency staff. So a lot of workers in the federal public service have been going into a physical workplace. For those who have been working from home, let's remember that it wasn't an option. At the start of the pandemic, you were forced to do it. You had to do it, and you had to figure out how to continue providing services to Canadians from your kitchen table, from the corner of a desk somewhere. And our members did it. And we provided essential services, things that had never been done before, things like CERB, and we proved that it worked. I think there's a lot of advantages that we need to take into account, and we need to take a holistic approach to remote work, because it's not just about advantages to workers in the federal public service. We're talking about less commuting time, less traffic, congestion, less cars on the road. That's better for the environment. We're talking about potential solutions to the housing crisis by converting some of these old federal buildings into affordable housing. There's net advantages in embracing remote work for everyone. And what we're asking for from the federal government is a little bit of vision and a capacity to adapt to the future of work, which includes remote work.
Are you concerned that it won't stop at 3 days per week? Because, again, I look at it where a number of people in the private sector might think, you know what, 2 days remote work is still pretty good.
For us, it's never been about the amount of days. It's not about 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. It's about a flexible approach, not trying to impose a one-size-fits-all solution, and having a remote work policy that recognizes the diversity and the dynamism of the federal public service and all the different jobs that are there. And a lot of those jobs can be done through telework. And the data backs that up. Our data, we recently, through ATIP, uncovered emails from managers at Treasury Board that show that they also know their own data, their own research shows there's been no dip in productivity. There's been certainly no dip in performance because of remote work. And if anything...
So you think that Ms. Fox, when she was here just earlier, saying that they did see a dip in productivity?
The data shows that that's not true, and we've uncovered email chains from managers at Treasury Board showing that they know, and they have the research showing that there's been no reduction in productivity, and also that they knew that this would aggravate the workers, this would aggravate the unions, that this would disturb people in their work-life balance, in their workflow, and being able to do their jobs. And yet they proceeded with it anyway without any real reason for doing it.
Last question for you. A number of people in cities like Ottawa, which depend on the public service and being in the downtown core, say, you know what, there's been a hollowing out and they need people to come back for small businesses in this community. What do you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Vanier. I'm right next to downtown. I love downtown. And the downtown core definitely needs to be supported. And I think the city and the mayor's office need to do a better job of doing that in Ottawa. But the solution can't be to just put that on the backs of federal public service workers. The other thing that I'll add is that the communities where these workers live, they also need support. There's small businesses there. There's communities that need people in them there too. So we need to think about this holistically. What kind of communities do we want to build, where we just have people living in suburbs and commuting to downtown cores, or contributing to vibrant communities where they live in places outside of downtown cores, whether that's in Ottawa or other cities?
We're going to have to leave it there. Alex Silas, National Executive Vice President of the Public Service Alliance of Canada. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.